away you go.
All right. Hi, I'm Thomas Clark. This is my final project. It's based around World War I and like the trenches and stuff. And I haven't got a name for it, unfortunately, yet, but that is something I will be getting onto immediately. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy. So my idea is I'm going to make a World War I walking simulator. You're going to start like wake up in a trench, and then you've got to traverse the 3D environment, trying to find signs of any like life really, just anyone else out there. Be able to explore little like checkpoints, I guess, bunkers throughout the thing where like the commanders would be or the higher up people would stay to try and find I don't know, clues to where everyone's gone. Um, the player's going to be able to hear dogfights and stuff above. I've already modeled a plane, which we'll see later on. So they're going to be going above, and then later on in the game, they'll put the trench might flatten out into like a field, and you'll be able to like walk up and have a look at it because it's quite detailed. Also, if I have the time, I'm going to model a tank, and then that will be able to go overhead, and there might be like rubble coming down, and it'll be loud above your head and stuff. And then occasionally you'll be able to see over into no man's land, but obviously it'd be very foggy and it'd be very dead looking. So yeah, I've already found a few little bits of sound that aren't on the PowerPoint, but I have found some few bits of ambience and stuff that fit really well for the planes, for like wind and rain, or like rubble coming down. Yeah, I'm gonna do it photorealistic. I'm gonna do all stuff with PBRs and Substance Painter and trying to get it looking hopefully very lovely. Yeah. It's a mood board I made, just a mood board really. Just shows how horrific the trenches were really. Got some tanks in there, got a plane in the middle, and then there's one of those like bunker things at the top right, and then just the trenches at the bottom really, and then the no man's land at the top. So if I can try my best to replicate these things, then I think it will turn out looking very nice. Genre, why I did a walking simulator? I like creating assets and environments. I could have done like still renders or just like not anything in Unreal, but I think my thing is environmental design. I like creating assets to go in that environment as well. And I thought the best thing to do would probably be a walking simulator. We did do walking simulators last year, but I really did click with that. And I think doing it again this year would be really good. They're completely different games, so that wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I like letting the player explore the project for themselves as well, like being able to actually physically, well not physically, but being able to actually walk around in the environment instead of just looking at like an image. That way they can explore it. I like being able to slow the player down as well, so they can really like experience everything. Yeah, and then I picked World War I because I've always been interested in the world wars, really, how interesting it was with the technology and things like that, and what they used just like 100 years ago to like compared to what if there was a war now with the same people and the same everything, how different it would actually be. And there's also a lack of World War I games. I did write a little bit about this. It says it's mainly due to World War II being better captured, more recent, better looking working military vehicles. And the main reason was that the big battles of World War I were all defensive victories, allowing the attacking team, the fun team to play, would usually just get massacred. So that wouldn't translate into a game very well because you would just stand around in, like I said at the bottom, horrific trenches for 6 weeks before making a charge for a field of mud and seeing how far you could get before getting shot. So, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to make something that hopefully will be a good World War I game. Yeah, that's why I did World War I, to hopefully shine a light on World War I. Well, not shine a light, but make a game about World War I. This is the biplane I mentioned earlier that I made. It's roughly based on the Bristol F2 fighter, which is the image at the top right. That's not a render or anything I made. I wish it was. So I wanted to make a plane, obviously, for the dogfights that I mentioned earlier, to happen above the player. I looked up just the best like biplanes of World War I, and this was just one of the top British ones, so I just went for that. So it's roughly based off that. It's not identical. So it's kind of like my own kind of biplane, I guess. But yeah, it is a World War One two-seater biplane fighter, developed by Frank Barnwell at the Bristol Aeroplane Company. Yeah, I modelled it in Blender and textured it in Adobe Substance, which is new to me, but we had a few problems, but we have resolved them now with normals and the UV maps and stuff like that. But they have been resolved now. But yeah, this is just a color palette really, like what the colors are going to be, like a mood board for the colors. Not very interesting, but there it is. Issues and debates. The main debate would be my game being historically accurate, because obviously the war involves so many different people and countries. You have to make it inclusive and balanced. So you're not, obviously the Nazis are going to be the bad people, but you can't make it too against Germans. Yeah, so I got to be careful with that. Another issue would be that nothing is out of place. So like an asset or I don't know, an object it's in the right time frame or in the right place. Otherwise, it will be less immersive for the player. Because if you were to be, I don't know, walking around in a trench and there was something from 20 years in the future or past, then you would probably pick that up quite quickly, depending on what it is. So I would have to do a lot of research to try and get everything historically accurate and in the right time frame to make everything match together. I just wrote a little bit about the gases being used because it was such a big issue. Because they were banned even after World War One because it was that bad. And I just wrote a little bit about each gas. Chlorine gas produces a greenish yellow cloud that smells of bleach and immediately irritates the eyes. But yeah, and then there's other two below it. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to include having gas in the game, but I'm not sure at the moment, but I might do. But yeah, and then there's just two below it as well. My research plan. For primary research, I used images from Cardiff Castle. They converted some of I don't know if it's called barracks, I don't know, part of the castle into World War One bunkers, World War bunkers. I did previously model a bunker and use the images originally for that, but they work very well for this project as well. The bunkers could accommodate up to 1,800 people in a total where were considered among the safest in the city, thanks to their thick external walls reinforced by banked earth ramparts on the inside. And then the images I took are on the next slide. And then another piece of research I did as I rewatched 1917. It's a great World War One film. The first 10 minutes is an unbroken shot of the actors walking through a small trench, which is, I will play a little bit just to show the trenches really. They also enter a little bunker at the checkpoint near the end, and that's exactly how I'd like my trench to look like. So I just skip through this video quickly.
I'm right.
So there's just an example of the trenches. Like just really gross looking with all the mud and just obviously it being like grim. And then they go into like a little bunker, which is how I would want the player to be able to walk in and explore something like this and find objects and stuff. And have it all dark and moody like that. And if I could, maybe have like a physics of the little, I don't know, sheet blanket on it. That'd be quite good if I could involve that. Yeah, and there's just the trenches again. So if I could literally like replicate this would be exactly what I'm looking for. Obviously no people, but yeah, that's what I'm going for. Oh, sorry, pause that. Battlefield 1 is a first-person shooter game developed by DICE. This is something that I've gone back and I haven't played, but I've looked at videos of. I have played in the past, but not replayed. It's great for showing just historically all different parts of World War One. Really, it goes through if you play the campaign, it goes through all the different stories of so many different people and stuff, and it's all historically accurate and everything. Yeah, so it's a very good way to show trenches and stuff again in a game instead of like a movie. Yeah, so I rewatched some videos of that. And here's the pictures I took of Cardiff Castle, of like the bunkers and stuff. I know I'm doing trenches, but obviously when it comes to like the little checkpoints and stuff, I could just use little bits from this and stuff. yeah, that's what I took from Cardiff Castle. Resources, what hardware will I use? When making my final project, I plan to do a lot in college, but when I'm making my final project, I plan to do a lot in college, but I'll be doing most of my game at home. I'm fortunate enough to have a powerful PC that can run like the software I need. Yeah, so I'll be doing a lot outside of college. Yeah. What software will I use? For 3D modeling, I use Blender. Texturing, I will use Blender a little bit and mainly Substance Painter, or maybe Unreal as well, depending on what the object is really. And I'll also build the game in Unreal Engine. What's new for me is definitely Substance. I haven't used it before at all, before the plane. But as you can see on the right, that's where some of the issues came up with the UV maps and the normals. But they have been solved since that screenshot. Yeah. Also PBR texturing, getting everything really photorealistic and nice looking. But will definitely add to the challenge of compared to like a low poly game. But I think I'm ready for that step up really. Yeah. And then animation and Unreal Engine, I'm gonna be doing for obviously the planes going above head. Instead of doing like keyframes, I might try and make it like follow a path instead, so it looks a bit smoother. If I can get that going, because obviously you don't want like a jaggedy flight. You want it to be all nice and smooth. Yeah. Any questions? Thank you for listening.
Hello, Tom. Thank you very much. That was a really good
Thank you.
coverage. Well done. I think I've got a very clear sense of the product now, and I know that why you're invested in it, which is great. And I've got a few things I want to explore a bit more. I suppose actually one of the things that I was just writing down right at the end is audio as a consideration, because from what you showed and like just generally in that sense of with there being little in the way of other things to get a sense of the fear, I suppose, is audio going to be a
Yeah.
big part of what you're making?
Oh, definitely. Like from that video as well,
Mm.
I could definitely like obviously the squelching of the feet and stuff like that is definitely something that will be involved.
Yeah.
And like I did mention it a little bit, but like maybe bullets flying above.
Yeah.
And like the
Sounds of like
dogfights and
the
the
planes
tanks.
and the tanks. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
that
like
kind of lots of like diegetic and non-diegetic sort of sounds, I suppose, that are like things in the distance as well as.
yeah.
But no soundtrack, I presume, more just for like getting the
Yeah,
sense of
just
ambience.
ambience. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. And what we use to do that? Have you got an established process for that?
What finding audio or like
Finding
putting
audio,
audio in?
yeah, finding and editing audio, because I
Yeah,
know.
there's that bit
Well,
of software called Soundly, which is
yeah,
really good.
yeah,
You can just literally drag and drop like WAV files into whatever really.
perfect.
But obviously that's like you can get like a premium version of that, but I'm not going to do that. But
Yeah,
there is like a lot of the free stuff is still very good.
yeah.
If I can't find it on there, probably YouTube. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't think like Foley for like a lot of things. I don't know. I
No,
don't think
you're
I
just going
like
to
obviously
source
because I
stuff.
want it to be quite sharp and because I'm going for like quite a realistic looking thing. So I would want everything to be quite like it's meant to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I don't think Foley would probably be the best thing to do.
And also, I suppose that takes away time because it sounds like it's quite ambitious in terms of modeling and
Oh,
texturing.
definitely.
Yeah. So that's fine. I think that's well justified. I think one of the things to do is just to make sure that you start building up that bank and finding those audio samples that you will incorporate.
Yeah.
I think
Definitely.
also you've proven in your previous final project, which you mentioned before, that you proficient with using audio to enhance the project. So that's something you
Yeah,
know how to
definitely.
do, isn't it, in Unreal?
Yeah. Like it adds like a complete different level really compared to if
Hmm.
it was just completely silent, you'd be a bit confused.
Exactly.
But yeah, it adds so much.
I think one of the things that I would encourage to look at as an extension beyond today is like you talked very loosely about. I only sort of really gathered a sense because you said about the plane being a British one. I
Yeah.
presume that you're playing from a British perspective. Is that right? Would you?
Yeah. Sorry, I should have made that a bit clearer.
No, that's all right. I think one of the things to do then, because that maybe wasn't clear, maybe isn't at the forethought or forefront of your mind, like that would be something to do to research wise, that
Mm,
to find the story. And I'm sure that if in research you'll be able to establish the story of maybe an individual person,
that'd be cool.
or maybe it's a mishmash of different people's accounts, and you make up something that's not,
Yeah.
one person. But like, I think it might be nice to add that level, because what I feel like is with walking sims is that they almost have that ability to be educational as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I think what you talked about as a product sounds like almost something that's educational rather than glorifying war in a way that Battlefield 1 does, and
Yeah.
all those series of FPSs, where it's less about well, there's no combat, I presume, in yours.
No, yeah,
Not and
really bad.
it's more about just raising that sense of fear, and I suppose like you said, the gruesome reality of what it's like to be in that trench.
Yeah.
So I think I think that would be a way that I would encourage you to explore. I think there's other products that are similar in that we looked at last year when we did Walking Sims, and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture would be another one in the sense that the story's very similar. Yeah, you're uncovering the reason why there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And you did a really good job last year actually with a horror take on that, where you have things pop up. I wonder if that might be something that you look at, maybe apparitions of people, a bit like in the same way that Everybody's Gone to the Rapture does, where there's almost where they use like particle effects to create the appearance of NPCs.
Like you can hear them talking, but it's like echoey and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wonder if you could, or that might be something that you could build in, maybe a couple of examples of that to look at, me.
Because the guy's going to be like, the guy's going to be like, he's like left for like, I mean, I guess he's going to be like left for dead. Like, I guess the people have like ended up retreating, and like they thought that the player was gone, so they just retreated without him.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess he's trying to find out where they've retreated to, just so he can have the safety of people, really.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And again, that could still be something that's changeable. Like it might be that they've all gone over the top, and he was
left there.
Yeah, he was like in the medical base, and he comes out a bit like kind of like I was thinking the start of oh god, the zombie thing. 28 days later when he's like he's woken up and it's like nobody's about. It's like I think it's trying to create that sense of disarray, or kind of the idea that they just haven't got a clue what's going on, and then you're like you say, you're piecing it together. It's thinking about what makes a logical step for a story to connect in that way. I think is good, and I think that's one of the things I'd encourage you to explore research wise, and link to other products that do a similar job of that.
Yeah, perfect.
But yeah, it sounds really good. What else did I write down? I said, so you're playing as a British soldier. So like I said, research that.
Because I wouldn't want to, like, with the objects I said somewhere about it being like, you don't want an object being out of place. And like, if I was to do like, if obviously you're going to be in a British trench, if I was to do, like, if I was to model something from, I don't know, like a helmet, I don't know, or like a bit of something, and then it was like German, you'd be like, and it was like obviously German or something, you'd be like, well, why is that in the British trench? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like, just got to make sure everything fits all together nicely.
Totally. I think like I'm going back, my historical knowledge of it is limited, but I think some of the things there's things that stand out in your head about when you learn about these events, and one of those things was that like for example, they all got rations. They got this this bar of chocolate sent by the king at the time, didn't they?
Yeah.
And like, so something like that as an artifact that's on the table in the trench, or like that they collect or something. Do you know what I mean? It might that could be some way of telling a little bit of the story, like they about what that meant to the soldier, and why that a lot of them, there was the case that a lot of these people had kept them and never ate them just because they thought it was so precious that they'd been given this thing, obviously when they were starving probably. And that this odd stories where you hear about someone had it in their top pocket and it got shot and it saved their life, and all those things. Those kinds of like odd things like that would be really nice to reference in it. I think that's where your historical research would come into play and just really help to tighten it up.
Definitely.
So you talked well about the idea that the photorealism's a new aspect and using substance. You're obviously proficient. We know that you're really good at modeling, and your Blender process is great. So this layer, and that way you've previously gone for a more stylized approach. This layer of like extra texture detailing, is that something you're going to do some set piece assets like the plane, and some things will be textured in Unreal, like the
Yeah.
landscape itself? What do you think?
Yeah.
Or...
I mean, it depends. I think it just depends what it is, how much it's going to be seen by the player, really.
Yeah.
How much it needs to be detailed. Like, I don't know, something far away, like a really dead tree or something.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have to have the most, like, you know what I mean? The bark wouldn't have to be 3D or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about level of detail there, where you change the set. Like if you have low LOD, then you can reduce the amount of effort gone into it, I suppose. Yeah.
Just how much the player's going to see it or interact with it, really. Just depends on how detailed it needs to be. Because with the plane, obviously, it's like it was just going to be overhead.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have to be that detailed. But then I thought maybe at the end it could be like a nicer ending where you do find some people, or you could find something like a tent or something with some people in, where like it would flatten out to a field, like it would be like obviously a field is nicer than a trench, you know what I mean? So like like, and there could be some like planes parked up, because I quite like in Blender I made quite a detailed model of it. So there could be these planes like parked up, or like we said yesterday, maybe like a really damaged plane like face down in the mud, you could see it over from the top of the trench.
Definitely. I think
like,
that's something that you can
destroyed.
Yeah, you can do like with that process, like now, like if you put a lot of effort into an asset like that, it needs to be used more than once. And if it's just buzzing overhead, there's no point in it being having all the detail that you've got.
It could be like almost low poly, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think like learn from that, like in the next phase. If you start on that detail, if I think this is where it's important to plan in terms of storyboarding and showing, map design and things before you commit too much. Because like if a tank, for example, that you talked about as an asset you're making, if that just plows over the top of the trench and it's a cut scene that's a triggered event and that's it, do you know what I mean? Then there's very little point in you doing more than a box with the tracks looking nice and this, the sound, if it's something like that. Whereas if you think actually I want that asset to be again a destroyed one, then you maybe make the turret like and stick that out of the mud or something, but maybe don't do the whole thing. So think about where you can save yourself time and how you can be clever with those challenges that come about.
I was going to say, with the tank, I guess it just depends on how much time I have, really.
Yeah,
and obviously, if I could make like a detailed one, that'd be good. Because then obviously it could be at the end, like next to the planes, because obviously it'd be like all their vehicles lined up or whatever. But if I don't have time, like you said, just do like a box with a nice looking track or whatever.
Yeah, and then it could be a set piece, like I say, it kind of rumbles over, and you're obviously cowering down, or you get a crouch and and it goes over. So yeah, I think and again that very much depends on your plan. So if it's an enemy tank, which that would make sense, maybe that it could be coming over the top, then you probably wouldn't want it parked up next to your plane. So I think it's like those sorts of things to think about. The other idea I've written, so I know that that's great. I think one of the other things just to kind of talk about, which is this type of environment lends itself very much to that, is that whole modular approach to construction. Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I didn't really mention it, really. I'm not really sure about the best way to approach it, really. Obviously modular would be the best, but I don't know if I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I probably would end up going for modular.
Yeah,
but
I think it can be a mixture. Like you're obviously only making a small section, so you're not making the huge map. But I think it's important to show the skill of like that you have, because you did that in the previous group project. You created those modular sections so well for the castle.
Yeah.
So and I think like when you look at this, like this still from the video that's paused on at the moment, we see like the sandbag sections that you could very easily just repeat and have as dividers. You could have obviously the wooden structure that holds the mud back and everything. Again, that can be used as a natural kind of divide where you make definitely irregular sections. You don't want them all to look perfect, and you can mask that with like the odd different position sandbag and things. But it's that kind of idea that you just show that in your process, and I think consider that. Some we're done.
Some people just come in.
Okay, yeah, we're done. We'll wrap this up, Tom. All right, well done.
Thank you. Cheers, Fraser.
All right, let me stop recording and yeah. Okay.